beyond the Democrats, you have 103,000 voters out there who are not Democrats.
That's right.
They're Republicans and Independents.
Yes.
What's going to happen there? Is that something you would concede to your principal opponent? Or
We concede no votes.
Well, how do you go about getting it?
Well, I will tell you, Kobe, I represent a very diverse ward in many ways.
Yeah, Colby and I live in it.
Yes, that you live in, and I have for the last 7 years represented a lot of independents and Republicans, and I also ran in a special election, and I'll tell you why that's important. Because in special elections, everybody votes, and so from my very first election, I made the decision to communicate to all of my voters from the start. And so I have enjoyed great support among independents and Republicans in my 7 years on the council.
The campaign, though, from here on out through the general election is really going to focus on substantive issues. Corruption may still be somewhere there, but it's not going to be the main issue. The person you're likely to face, David Catania, has made a name for himself in the area of education, not only in health, but education. What are your differences with him on education policy in the different district?
Well,
and please remember, this show is only an hour long.
Okay, I'm happy to talk about what's important with me in education, and we really don't know who's going to be in this race. So I have a potential opponent, and I'm looking forward to discussing our differences when the time is right. So I will say this. You say he's made a name for himself, and I don't know if it's a good name, because
I didn't say whether it was or not.
I know,
it's a
but
name.
That's what I'm saying. And so when I get out across the city, what people want to make sure they appreciate, and I've supported staunchly having mayoral control of the schools. And it's important that we have a mayor that's focused and energetic and is going to get behind a chancellor that has the right ideas and let the chancellor run the schools.
How about an issue such as like special education, where he proposes to change the period for determination of whether a kid is eligible for special education or not from, say, 120 days to 60 days. You have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think the chancellor needs to decide. We need to put our full faith and credit in behind the chancellor's decisions. She's the educator, and she's responsible for making sure that we have the right people in place to make those decisions. Now, there are things around special education that I see as policy issues, not nitty-gritty management issues, that I think that we have to focus on. I've been concerned, for example, about this administration's closure of the Sharp Health School. When I talk to parents of children, they want to make sure, and many parents, I think that we have assumed for too long that people want to leave their neighborhoods and go out to Maryland and Virginia to go to school. They really don't. They'd rather not put their kids on a bus for an hour and have the services that they need in our schools. But the schools have to be ready. So my approach to this is make sure, yes, let's keep kids and families in their neighborhoods in the district to go to school, but we have to look at our full portfolio of schools and services and diagnostic services to make sure that children are being served.
We got an email from Cynthia who says, what on earth qualifies Ms. Bowser to recommend adding the middle school McFarland to Roosevelt? Middle school is a very delicate time, and people who are well versed in the development and needs of middle schoolers should be making those decisions, not politicians. What do you say in response?
Well, yes, I because I've been elected to represent 75,000 people, I go out and talk to them about what they want. And what we've seen is that people are voting with their feet. They'd rather be in a standalone middle school that is really serving those middle grades. And we have some options where kids go through a K through 8 school, and we have other options where kids are in a standalone middle school. And what I believe is that just by the number of people who want to go to standalone middle schools, is that a standalone middle school is needed in that area.
Tom, is your question on education?
Yes, it's education.
Okay, because I
it
have
is
a
education.
caller who wants to talk about education.
Education is going to be an issue in this campaign with Catania, assuming he gets on the ballot.
Education is always an issue. It's
it
been an issue for the last year, and it has nothing to do with who might run in November.
And it's a principal issue. I think everyone agrees it's a principal issue in the city itself, is how we're going to maintain any progress that's been made. You have said Kaya Henderson has not been urgent enough, and a sense of urgency. I think that's the phrase you use. I want to know, in terms as a reporter looking forward to the next 7 months, assuming that David Catania makes it onto the ballot, as most people think he will, are you going to engage him in forums across the city? Some people have already suggested to me that you're going to do a bare minimum of forums so that you can not be accused of avoiding them, but you're going to try to shut him out. Can we anticipate that you'll go through this grueling list of forums that we normally have in a campaign, or will you try to run outside of those forums?
Well, I don't run away from people asking questions. I think you know that, and we all know that it makes a good story to think we're going to have a competitive general. But we also know that that's not what the early polling would suggest.
Well, that was the post polls at 50 something to 30 something for him. But he's been to 130 schools. He's making education. He's introduced all types of legislation in the council as chairman that you haven't introduced legislation. And I just think whether people like David or don't like David.
Or whether the media wants to have a close race.
Well, I don't think we have to create this because it exists.
Yes.
But I want to know that am I going to have to spend my time going to a lot of forums or just 2 or 3? How do you want it to unfold?
Well, certainly, and we're going to put together a great team, just like I have done this year, and I appreciate the accolades that everybody has given us for running a smart race that gave us a 12-point victory on 11-point victory on Tuesday. So we're going to just approach it very strategically.
Are you going to do that with the same team, or are you going to change the team?
I think that we're going to have the same very good team in place.
I haven't heard
an answer on. Are you going to do all the? You'll be invited to 20 different forums at least. Do you anticipate you'll more likely accept forums or minimize the number of forums you intend to go to?
We're going to participate in forums. I didn't participate in every forum that I was invited to on this last race because it was impossible. And so the balance that
barring
our
scheduling problems, you'll be at the forums.
Pardon me?
Barring scheduling forums,
having not been invited to any of them, I can't accept in advance. But we're going to talk to our goal, of course, is to make sure as many people as possible get to hear my views.
James in Annapolis, Maryland, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. So speaking of Mr. Catania, he has a proposal in front of the council right now for a grant to students from D.C. Seeking to go to college that would help pay for things like their room and board. And Eleanor Holmes Norton has warned that this proposal would directly endanger the DC TAG program, which is a grant from the federal government that enables DC students to, again, go to college. The proposal that Catania has put forward is for less money than the federal program, but he still seems to be pushing forward with it despite the dangers. My question for Ms. Bowser is, will she be supporting that proposal of Mr. Catania's, or is she more supportive of DC TAG? And how does she feel about efforts within DC to help make middle schoolers more prepared and more college ready?
So the question was about the DC Promise program, which was proposed by my colleague, and even during the debate, we all knew that it had to get funded, and so I was supportive of it getting out of the council and becoming law. The mayor and I actually have a cheat sheet of items that were included in the mayor's budget proposal that was released yesterday. The DC Promise initiative wasn't one of them. So what the council is going to do over the next 50 some days is really review all of those alternatives. The bottom line now is this: if we are to pay for the DC Promise program, something else that's included in the mayor's proposal won't get funded. So we're going to dig deep into the budget to see what rises to the top.
Do you want to fund it?
I want to look at everything that's in the budget. The caller also kind of set it up. Is it DC Promise versus DC TAG? I'm 1,000% committed to DC TAG and making sure the federal government knows that this is a program that has worked for the district, and we don't want them to back away from their commitment at all. I will say this also. I got some very gracious calls from Congressman Issa, who has oversight over the district at the Congress, and Senator Reed, all extending a hand, recognizing the issues that we face in the District of Columbia, and extending a hand to be willing partners to
Speaking of the Congress of the United States and the federal community, so to speak, every candidate who is in the mayoral race says, if I get elected, I'm going to be a big supporter of voting rights and statehood for the District of Columbia. And that's become the thing to say, what would you do differently than has been done in the past to advance the cause for statehood?
I think that we all need to kind of roll up our sleeves and do the persistent work that needs to happen.
What does that mean?
What that means is I want to have an everyday presence. In addition to our delegate who fights hard and gets things done for us, we need to have representatives on the Hill that are talking about all of our federal interests. And we have a lot of them. Metro not being a small one, roads, bridges, our federal lands in the district like Walter Reed and St. Elizabeth's and the land around all our RFK and all of our national parks, and of course our self-determination. I rank the order of the things and how I would pursue them, but our budget autonomy, I think the federal government shutdown and its effect on us demonstrates very clearly to all of us that we have to unhook our budget from the federal budget. We're not a federal agency. Legislative autonomy, certainly, and also the path to statehood.
Does that mean you will change in some way the way in which the mayor's office interacts with the Congress, as opposed to, for example, your predecessors have generally stayed back, held back, and let Congresswoman Norton carry the ball on the Hill? Will you change that in any way? Have your people from a Bowser administration actually working hands-on with members of Congress?
Yes, I think then, and that's not to step on the Congresswoman's toes, because certainly she has her perspective and things that she has to do on the Hill as a delegate and a federal legislator. Our job is to also make sure that members are aware of the district's interest from the mayor's point of view, and we'll do that.
Which gets us to what's going to happen over the next several months in the city, the budget itself. Will you approach the budget from the standpoint of a member of the council, Ward 4, or the Democratic nominee? And this, I mean, you have an agenda, you have a program that you want to see put in place for next year. Do you try to shape the budget for next year to match the kind of program objectives you have? Or will you let this year work out the way it's going to work with the mayor as a mayor, and you just wait and take on in January whatever you inherit from him?
Sure. Well, I'm going to wear many hats for the next 9 months, and I'm going to approach it, and I'm the Ward 4 council member. We're going to make sure that we're approaching it from that way. I'm the chairwoman of the Economic Development Committee, so I'm taking a close eye at all the economic development projects, and I have the opportunity to begin a very cooperative relationship with my current colleagues and in the future the folks that I'm going to work with in terms of an equal branch of government.
Would you advise the mayor not to take any actions that would have long-range impact, particularly on the next administration, or that he would consult with you before he would take decisions that would affect policy in the future?
Well, I'm hopeful, and this is what I said in the breakfast this morning, that I know that this mayor cares about the city. It's his hometown, just like it's mine. He spent decades of service to the District of Columbia, and I really have no reason to think that he's going to do everything to ensure a smooth transition of government. The fact is, though, our charter says that the next mayor becomes mayor in January, and so he is still in control of the city. I'm hopeful that as a member of our party and as a person who will support the Democratic ticket, that he's going to work with me and Phil Mendelson and all of the members of the council to ensure a smooth transition.